Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Interlinked, the official podcast of Neo Tokyo, powered by Shrapnel.
Brace yourself for impact, crypto gamers, because I am reporting from the Shadow Zone. STX1 just wrapped up. It was an absolute banger. I know I was out there grinding for my Sigma, trying to get my missions complete. Only problem is, I suck. So I got most of my Sigma, full confession, off of dead bodies and extracted my ass out of there. But I'm going to get a second bite at the apple in STX2 dropping right around the corner. And it's going to include new map updates, suppressors, which I'm excited about because I want to live my inner James Bond fantasy. And I will be there grinding for some more Sigma. So if you haven't gotten a chance to get your extraction pack, now might be the time so you too can drop in. Huge shout out to our sponsor, BYTES Games. They are inspired by gamers and funded by their community. They have a epic game on the Epic Games Store, a third-person shooter called Nexus. Hop on in there and check that out. They're also currently selling nodes, so if you're interested, check that out at their website, playable.games. That is a 3 instead of a B on playable. Now strap in for the rest of this episode of Interlinked.
Today, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Felix, the head dev of Neo Tokyo, a founder of two different projects, Mure and Yurei, and also just a wealth of experience. One of the best people that I've ever met in my entire life. Felix, welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much for having me, Ben. You're too kind. You're always so heartwarming when you're with your kind words and everything.
Well, luckily, I'm able to talk about those things because it's true. So it's easy to be heartwarming when I'm just talking about the truth. Side by side, as always, the incredible Mr. Nick, crypto atheist, and our increasingly frequent, which I'm very excited about, additional partner in crime, Mr. Jared. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Always good to be
Awesome,
here.
guys. Love it. Love it. So, anyways, without further ado, let's jump into the episode. Felix, what's your story?
Where do we start? Where shall we start? What do you want to know?
From the very beginning.
Oof. Well, I was born in a small little town called Linköping in Sweden. That's not so exciting. Let's start with, I guess, where my journey in crypto started. I think I've brought this up before as well in some other Neo Tokyo episodes and everything, but I was very fortunate to get introduced to crypto through one of my upperclassmen when I was in university in 2017, 2018. He's a cool guy who actually did his thesis by writing source code that is still to this day, I think, running in the EVM, which is pretty cool. And he told me that I should get into Ethereum. So I did, which was very cool at the time. It was at the end of the bull run in 2017, 2018, or 17, 2018, yeah. And it went to shit. So I shoved it into the drawer, didn't touch it, continue my studies as usual. And then fast forward a bit, coming out of my bachelor's, early master's, mid time of my master's, we basically hit the new bull market and Bitcoin was taking out all-time highs and everything. Meme coins and shit coins were just picking up more pace as well. Dogecoin was very popular. And I started as well. We had one of our lovely founders from Neo Tokyo, Becker, starting to tweet a lot of stuff. I've always been following Becker as well. And I started dabbling with NFTs. And I think I bought my first NFT in June of 2021, I think it is. And then after that, we got into Neo Tokyo, all the riddles, met a lot of great people, including people here, and made friends for life, kind of made my career in Web3 and everything as well. And the rest is history, basically.
I love it. So take us back into your days of young Felix era and, getting into your technical prowess. Obviously, you're the head developer of Neo Tokyo, which is no small feat. I don't think I'd be wearing all this epic Neo Tokyo merch for those of you who have the visual without you and your contributions here. So maybe you could talk a little bit about kind of how you got in the position of being able to be a developer. Like, how did you learn it? What was your trajectory of learning? yeah, maybe just kind of fill that gap in for us.
Sure thing. So I've always had a knack for tech. I've always been fortunate to have an easy time learning things, and I've always enjoyed really digging into the details. And I didn't really start much programming until I was 16 or 17. But before then, I did a lot of things like building my own computers, doing a lot of like Photoshop and so on. I started doing Photoshop when I was 7, did that for like 8 years or so. I did 3D animations and so on, had a lot of fun. And then uh, basically chose to either become a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer, and then chose what seemed to be the easiest thing and most interesting to me, which was software engineering. And basically from there, did some introductory courses before university. Started off with Harvard CS50X. It's a very great free course for anybody who wants to learn about like the introductions of computer science and so on. And from there, went to university, uh, dug deeper and deeper into everything that is tech there, and chose to delve deeper and deeper into machine learning and AI as well. So quite late, which is also a great indicator that it's never too late to start learning, and especially not in tech and software because it moves so fast that anybody can always pick it up whenever they want to, and they can still be a leader in a couple of years.
That is actually extremely inspiring that you can start late and still, become a leader relatively quickly. Um, do you a quick side tangent that I want to get back to the story. Do
Mhm.
you see the evolution and the current pace of improvement of AI as an assistant to or a co-pilot with the person that's learning to code or program or get into that skill set? Um, do you see that cutting down the time required to like get up to proficiency, like going from nothing but a dream into being able to build something? Like what does that time frame look like? How does that get cut or accelerated with AI?
That's an excellent question. I think it heavily depends on the type of learner you are. So more often than not, many people learn by doing, which I think AI can be extremely useful to do to get things up and running and working. The dangerous side of that is that the AI will then help and do a lot of things that you should do on your own. So you basically, instead of having the Lego blocks, you maybe start with a Lego wall when you're building a castle, for example. And understanding how that wall is built up as well can be important. So I would say, yes, it can help you get going real quick, but the important AI builds something for you, it's important for you to actually understand why it built it and how it built it. And also then understand, is it buggy or not? Because that's one of the issues that we see right now, just because the AI is learning to code from a lot of the code that is being open sourced to date. And all code written by people contains bugs. So it's taking both the good sides and the bad sides of what we're doing and bringing that into what it generates. So it's important to understand that AI is a great tool as a medium of help, but it's not a solution. It's not the like the band-aid that you slap onto something or the piece of duct tape that is supposed to solve a problem. It doesn't completely solve everything, at least not yet.
Yeah, and I think that's a very astute observation of if there are a lot of bugs in the inputs to the AI, then the outputs of the AI, there most likely are going to be bugs too. And especially if you don't know how to fix that or understand what's going on because you're a rookie, then that could actually cause some issues. So we might see a world where there are some tools and infrastructure being built, and then there's bugs in it, and we might have so there might be like that era of like janky code that we might see, which would be very interesting for all the participants of the internet. But anyways, to jump back to your story, which is what we're here to focus on. So you start learning, you dive deep, you go deep into the AI space. I don't know how much you could talk about it, but maybe you could talk about some of the bigger companies that you were working with and kind of your trajectory and work history, and then maybe bring us into you kind of stopped at Neo Tokyo beginning, but maybe just kind of get us up to there, and then let's take the narrative forward and some of the things you built within Neo Tokyo.
Yeah, sure thing. So, I mean, I started working part time during my university years, already from like second half of my first year, doing some entrepreneurial stuff, some consulting, making sure to find out where I could learn the most, and that was well with monetary incentives, you learn way faster. At least I do. Um, and I got into a very interesting project or a company that was at the time known as IGDB, Internet Games Database. Basically, the whole goal was to create IMDb for games. And so at the time became or he's still one of my mentors and a great friend. Um, and they were fortunate enough to be acquired by Twitch. So Twitch is also a subsidiary of Amazon. So we, in theory, or we actually got acquired by Amazon because Amazon was the employer. And I got into Amazon and so on as a software engineer through that route, which was a great learning experience as well, because it's not often a Swedish individual gets to experience an Amazon acquisition. It's not fun, let me tell you that. It's painful. A lot of late nights and early mornings to get everything ready. And two, to go through the rigorous process that Silicon Valley companies do when it comes to interviews. In a day, I think I had 5 interviews to just pass the bar for becoming a software engineer. And then following that, I got into my master's. So I was still working part-time at the time when we got acquired and everything, because I was still finishing up my studies. And with me focusing on machine learning, I thought that I should strive higher than becoming a software engineer, and I should actually aim to become an applied scientist. So within there, I basically had to redo a lot of tests, another few interviews with a lot of mathematics, derivatives, and so on. And I was fortunate enough to pass that. So when I basically graduated my master's, I also got into a new role as an applied scientist at Twitch, working on natural language processing problems, search engines, and a couple of other things. And then soon thereafter, crypto happened. So I was doing basically that for about 18 months, if I recall correctly. And I had been very, very active in New Tokyo during the time as well, getting a lot of attention. And for those in New Tokyo who remember, one of the things that happened was that Crypto AGC or Andres, he put out a fun post that said, if this post gets more than, I think, 600 or 800 hearts, Felix will quit his job. And it got like 1,000 likes or something like that. And at the time, I decided that it was time to leave as well. So I did it. So I quit and went full-time Web3 in April of 2022. So 2-year anniversary is coming up now. Yeah, since then, I've been starting up things like Spectre along with him, which is now known as Yurei. I started up my own dev agency, which is known as Ignio. And then last but definitely not least is Mure, which is basically my latest baby and sort of like a sassification of what was Spectre at the time, which focuses on payments, fundraising tooling, and basically making blockchain easy for people who want to work with finance. And yeah, in between there as well, as Ben mentioned earlier, I went from being a humble citizen to becoming one of the leads, becoming the head of dev, having worked with Thrasher very closely, who was the creator of Neo, helped with the Neo Tokyo citizen migration and the BYTES 2.0 migration, helped define the staking system and the overall tokenomics for BYTES 2.0, and a lot of other technical stuff as well.
So I just want to quickly recap the fact that you literally went all in on Web3 because of a tweet that went viral. That is amazing. And just one of the many reasons why you're an absolute legend. just a goat, and a champion amongst men.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, it kind of stems a lot from what my mentor, Chris, also taught me is that don't ever think that you are ready at the time because you never will be. So if you have a chance and you feel like it's what you're very, very interested in doing, you should go for it. You will never be ready to do it. And that's what I did. So he helped me push me out of the bird's nest, even though I had a great possible career and everything there.
Yeah,
He
I
lost me
love.
again.
Yeah, lost you just for a sec there towards the end. But I remember that post going up on Twitter. So I'll claim 1,000 of one of the likes. But I'd love to dive into a little bit more detail around the dev team. I think it's something that this, the citizens themselves maybe don't understand very well, like how it's sort of like laid out. How does work get distributed? How do like sort of like projects get picked? I mean, as much as you can kind of reveal how the sausage is made, I think that would be very, very interesting, not only for the citizens, but, a lot of these projects have dev requirements in their own respective dev teams. So I think it'd be interesting to be able to learn what's one of the best in the industry is doing.
Yeah, sure thing. And thank you for the compliment. Um, I was going to say that, I mean, if we start from the process of how Neo Tokyo is run, it is right now it's not as active as it used to be. But that is because, I mean, we have a lack of manpower. We don't necessarily have enough bandwidth to plan everything that we want to do because Firestorm is one of the core drivers of what it is that we should do and shouldn't do. But the way that we've done that mainly is that he helps be the PM that he is to help prioritize what we need to actually execute on. And then I come in and help as well with figuring out, okay, what should we prioritize? How should we go by doing this? And then we have people that are just basically volunteering to help develop things. And then we assign people those different tasks. And tech development is an agile process. We have tickets. We try to make sure that people know what their task specification is, and we provide as much information as possible. And then they're supposed to only focus on that ticket that says, hey, do X, Y, Z. Once these things are ticked off, send the code our way, we'll review and we'll deploy. So that's basically the process that we go by in a nutshell. And when it comes to other crypto projects, I mean, the process is usually similar on the front work to launch an MVP because then it's more like crunch time. Everybody keeps pushing out code all the time, making sure that things get fixed when they break because things always break. And it's more or less, I mean, especially in crypto, it's all about moving fast and breaking things, like very much so, because the space is moving so fast as well. So, yeah, that's the gist of it, I would say.
And then to dive in just a bit deeper, what would you say has like been the biggest lift that y'all at the dev team have produced, and maybe a couple like tidbits of, what made that such a challenge, and how you kind of guys work through the solution?
I think I would have to say that the biggest lift we did was the migration, because that was a full on, like, I think 10-man operation overall of what we did because we had like 10 different, if not more, individuals touching all the different pieces of code, because it was making sure that we had the bytes contract done, which was done by the Superverse team, and the staking system. We had me, Thrasher, and a couple of others working a lot on everything would be working seamlessly. We had people in the dev team at New Tokyo making sure that the front end was updated so we could connect all the pieces. And yeah, and in the end, we had some hiccups because there are always hiccups. I would say a key factor is not, when it comes to determining skill of a developer, is not the fact that they're not breaking things. It's at the pace that they can figure out and basically fix the problems that are occurring. If you can find out that there's a bug and actually solve it within minutes or less than an hour, you're very, very skilled. And we did not have any longer term issues, I would say, for that. So
I would say probably one of the most epic parts of that is that it only took 2 weeks as well. It was really just a beautiful thing.
oh yes, yeah. Only 2 weeks with a big asterisk or like 10,000 of them. Yeah, I love that. 2 weeks is a notorious. For those who don't know, 2 weeks is the notorious time frame that we always give when things are supposed to be deployed, and it always gets delayed. Always gets delayed. I think from the original inception of BYTES 2.0, what did we get? Like, I think it was like 1.5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah. So, I mean, 18 months and 2 weeks, maybe. So that's a good
That's
padding.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, and I think everybody was very excited the first time that Alex said, "All right, it's going to be 2 weeks," and then the next 2 weeks after that, it's like, "All right, we expect 2 weeks," and then as it became more of a meme, I think really the community started to rally behind 2 weeks, and now it's become more than just a frame of reference. It has become an ethos and really
Yes.
something special.
Yes. And I love that. I mean, I'm happy that people turn it into a meme rather than kind of grilled us for it. I know I was pulling my hair out when I heard those estimates to begin with, because when we when we wrote the proposal for BYTES 2.0, it was only a draft, and we had less than a week to do it. And I was like, oh, this is so stressful. But we managed to really pull through some interesting stuff at that point. So
And GG's, because it's been working very well. And I would say I've had literally zero issues ever since you said we're ready to go and things are live. So,
oh, thank you.
well, GG, well played. Well played on that.
Yeah, same here. I probably migrated, 30 different assets and it all happened beautifully.
That's the one thing I'm most happy about, the gas optimizations we managed to do with that as well. Because we managed to basically, similar to how ordinals are using recursive NFTs and so on now, given that, or not recursive NFTs, recursive inscriptions, given that Neo Tokyo is a fully on-chain NFT collection, we managed to do something very, very similar, where we basically don't regenerate any data that is already on-chain. We're basically referring back to the old collection. And that way we can basically create a new token, but it's just using the same data. So it doesn't cost anything extra.
Absolutely beautiful. So I want to move into kind of what's on the forefront of your mind and what you're working on and what you're excited about now. Clearly, you're building a couple of different things all at the same time. So I'll kind of leave it up to you to spearhead which one you want to highlight. But yeah, would love to just kind of learn more and like catch us up to date. And then let's dive deep. Let's talk about it. Like, what problems are you trying to solve? How did you discover that? And what's the unique solution you're bringing in?
For sure. I mean, the most general solution out there right now of the products that I'm working on is probably Mure. And it's kind of acting as the core centerpiece of everything that I'm trying to build with the other company that is Yurei as well. And as I mentioned before, it's mainly focusing on fundraising and payments right now. But what we are trying to do is we're trying to build out a service company where you can, similar to how you can use a multi-sig wallet for like Gnosis Safe or just Safe as it's called these days, have a self-custodial solution where you can deploy your own smart contracts. We maintain everything for you, and you can basically get up and running with, be it fundraising or payments or staking or whatever you want to do on chain with dynamic pools using your own contract within minutes. On the smart contract side, we have that already created. We have it up in production. We're working with some pretty big partners. One of them being Radon, the DAO for Shrapnel. We've also worked with Shrapnel on some things as well, which is very, very fun. So woo to Shrapnel for that, making everything possible. And we have been working with some other big clients as well. We're working with Ape Terminal on some things as well. But that's something that is coming out in the next few months, hopefully. Basically what it does, it basically allows you to take full control over the data side when it comes to the smart contract, to basically track everything that is going through it, like a bookkeeping layer. And we then provide a lot of other smart contracts and off-chain technology to make it easy to do things like KYC. So you can do fundraising legally, you can distribute assets trustlessly. So as you actually fundraise, you also make sure that people will be able to claim their assets when the token. We have solutions so people can pay for any type of orders. So for example, we could do a Tokyo merch store run through this as well. And yeah, we're working right now on staking solutions as well, because that's one of the requests that we've had. And I saw that my internet connection just read as unstable. So let me know if I lagged out anywhere. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, awesome. So with that said, basically, if anybody has questions regarding that, you hit me up over at Felix Norden at Mure.app, or just go at Mure.app on the that isn't necessarily that company on its own. It's more what you can do with it, right? And that's where things like Yurei come into play, where it is kind of showcasing the prime example of why we built this tech, and that is to make it very, very easy and accessible to get up and running with fundraising as a community, as a DAO, as a syndicate, whatever you want to call it, in a legal and compliant way. So we provide all the technology there that is supposed to be as compliant as possible, according to at least where we run things in Singapore. so that you can choose and opt into doing, like I mentioned before, KYC processes. You can do token gating. You can have a flexible fundraising system with different rounds and like requirements like token balances, NFTs, traits, what have you. And yeah, basically give the end user a good experience, because using spreadsheets and so on for fundraising is dangerous. And we want to make it as hard as possible to fumble things up. And that's what the blockchain is great for. So, yeah.
I do just want to say, Jared, I want to hand it over to you for sure. But I do also just want to be extremely transparent with the audience. I am a partner of Yurei, so I just want to be super transparent and come out from the gate and say that. So now everybody knows. Anyways, over to you, Jared.
Cool. I wanted to actually, I'm going to throw like a little outside little shot here. I noticed Stripe, who used to use Bitcoin on their app like 6 years ago, I think is the last time they did it. They just announced that they're coming with USDC stablecoins on Polygon, on Ethereum, and on Solana. So, to me, I mean, that's massive for the industry. And it brings a lot more sort of clout to cryptocurrencies. How does something like that announcement sort of change, probably not what you're doing, but change sort of the way that you're maybe marketing it or who you're reaching out to? And are people more, and VCs or whoever you're out there talking to, are they more apt to come in and say, oh, that's really interesting? Say, hey, well, Stripe's doing it. Let's take a look at it. And how does that affect Mure and Yurei? I'm curious about that.
That's an excellent question. I mean, we haven't, those tweets came out very, very recently, if I recall correctly, like just a couple of days ago.
I think it was yesterday.
Published news. We haven't really seen much of an effect from it yet, I would say. But it's definitely something that is going to be useful for like the payments vertical that we are targeting as well already. Because Stripe, if they can facilitate that well, that's amazing, because Stripe is already a great product, and they're kind of tackling things that we are envisioning that we would want to tackle in a few years. So maybe we'll have to pivot and see what comes out of it. But I don't know what the underlying solutions look like as well. The key thing that we have with our product that we try to push for as well is that you have actually true data ownership. You actually own the information on chain, and that even though it might cost a bit more when it comes to storage and so on, it still makes it also so it's going to be verifiable, right? And that's one of the things that we try to hammer home on when it comes to leveraging the blockchain. We really want to make sure that people are aware that, hey, things should be verifiable. Don't trust, verify. And that's where I think we can help upsell ourselves. But I think also, to be honest, I think we want to focus more and double down on the main vertical, which is the big player like Stripe comes in. It's going to be very hard to argue that, say, hey, we're a small startup, use us rather than them, when they probably have all the processing and everything needed as well to off-ramp the capital and so on.
And what are you guys doing as far as, because this is such a new field as far as legally. And I'm curious what you guys are doing to figure out the sort of unintended consequences of some of your decisions. That's number one. And number two, how do you figure out what you don't know? That's always the big trap is, I'm prepared for everything that I know, but what are the things that come out from left field and you're like, oh, I didn't know about that. And they always happen. So
yeah, the unknown unknowns, they're the worst. So when it comes to living with our consequences and our decisions, I mean, the first thing that we are very adamant about from the tech side is to making sure that everything is upgradable. Because regardless of how things go with software, they always have bugs, as we already mentioned. So being able to upgrade and sort out any mistakes, especially when you have customers, is something that is key. And we try to focus heavily on that and adopt a lot of the Gnosis safe principles that they have, which we love. Everything should be self-custodial. You can manage everything and you can own everything that is, you then facilitate to make sure that it works. As for more on the legal side and compliance side, we constantly try to keep in touch with a lot of people. I mean, Jared, you've been speaking with our COO very, very recently on about like next upcoming questions on regulations and so on when it comes to the US. And we already have our legal partner as well in Singapore to always keep us updated on everything that is going on, see if there are any changes, shifts in sentiment, any potential partners that we can find to make like processes easier and whatnot. So we always try to keep our finger on the pulse there, which also leads into the unknown side. That's one way of handling it, because people then tell us, hey, you don't do this, or it's great that you do this. You should also do X, Y, Z. And the other thing is that given that we are still kind of small, we try to always listen to requirements from potential clients, because given that we're so small, we can move pretty fast and we can get things rolling. And with that as well, we figure out that we have solutions with the tech that we already have that works out. So for example, the payments vertical just came from the fact that we had people at Radon asking us, hey, can we do this? And we were like, let's try it. And it worked. And all of a sudden we had a new vertical that we can actually apply, which is great. So we're trying to listen a lot to the customers and see, hey, is there an itch that you have that we can solve? And if it is, and if it's not too big of a carry or a lift, then we'll go for it.
And to continue to dive into the regulatory subject, I think, anyone who's been in the crypto space for more than a week and has been on Twitter can see that reasons why you don't want to open up a company like this, or really any crypto company in the United States. But for all the builders in the audience, why was Singapore the right spot? What sort of environment do they have there that you found appealing?
Two main reasons, I would say. One, Singapore is in a tax haven, which was very, very important for us, because going to a tax haven when you're trying to build something that we are trying to build, it will potentially cause people to lift an eyebrow or frown and so on. And we want to be as clear as possible that we're trying to build something that is supposed to live for decades, hopefully. I mean, our vision with the company which is very far-fetched, but we are hoping to actually help pave the way for the next evolutionary step for banking systems, because we believe that blockchain is going to be more transparent and it's actually going to be more reliable. And building that on an offshore company is going to be risky, for example, because then people will not necessarily want to use you. That was the first reason. And the other one is that we have aspirations, for example, with Yurei and so on, to be able to go onshore onto the US in the future, have like licensing and so on, and really go all the way to become something that is huge. And working with something that is as rigorous, or almost as rigorous at least, as Singapore when it comes to the jurisdiction, is a great way to then make sure that you can kind of future-proof yourself to also be able to go into something like the US. So that was the other primary reason.
And just to do a quick compare contrast between two of the big favorites of I feel like a lot of people choose Singapore, a lot of people choose Dubai. Was Dubai sort of in the thought process? Were there any sort of like pros and cons that dictated that decision?
Yes and no. Dubai falls more, don't have that taxation per se. And it is in the Middle East, so it's a bit more controversial at times. Singapore is more like, it is sort of like the US of the East, in my opinion. And it has more rigorous like legislations, and the jurisdiction makes sure that things are working as it should, similar to how the US does. Whether or not that is a good thing, I leave up to the listener to decide, of course. But that was the main reason, I would say. And we were fortunate enough to have a lot of community members and supporters that had like connections there. So we got in contact through our members to some very, very good lawyers and so on to help us get started. So that's basically why we ended up there. And I still to this day talk with them and use them and so on. So it's good.
Now a word from our sponsors.
Introducing Honeyland, a fun mobile casual strategy game built on Solana and available in iOS and Android stores across the world. Honeyland has achieved next level convenience by facilitating the purchasing of their NFTs and HXD token within the app. And you can use Google and Apple Pay. They have a massive upcoming airdrop and some partners like MasterCard, NASA, and StepIn. So hop on over to honey.land to learn all about this and more. Introducing Creo Engine, a next-level Web3 gaming ecosystem that connects gamers and developers in a Web3 gaming hub. Hop on their Creo Play platform to check out current and upcoming titles like Evermore Nights, Slime Haven, Creonia Metaverse, and Arcade Fest. The team has earned the endorsement of the chairman of Indonesia's People Consultative Assembly and earned a 10 out of 10 from Hackin on their cross-chain bridge audit. Check all this out and more on creoengine.com. Introducing Gamety, the first gaming platform on Rune's protocol. They are changing the game in the Bitcoin ecosystem by ditching those Ponzi-like, hyperinflated play-to-earn models that we all know and hate. And they are introducing a unique framework for sustainable game economics. This framework already has 30 plus casual games under development and boasts a unique rewarding system and time-based call to action ad system. Check out their website, gamety.io, to learn more. Introducing Ridotto, gambling infrastructure that offers seamless on-chain experiences. Ridotto is built on 3 pillars: play, build, and bankroll. Play your favorite casino games with confidence, knowing that every outcome is fair and transparent. Build on their infrastructure to create your own gaming projects and be the house and earn through bankrolling. Learn all about this and their big upcoming betting on chain launch at ridotto.io.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
So thinking about the idea of capital formation and investing into I would say the bleeding edge of crypto, that is probably one of the more difficult things to get right. So maybe you can talk a little bit about like what's the actual thesis on helping to facilitate capital formation to invest into these projects. Like, how do you identify what the next, Shrapnel is? By the way, we all love Shrapnel, big supporters of the pod. We love you guys. Obviously, working very closely with them. How do you identify the next Shrapnel versus all of the 99% of others that just fade into obscurity?
Ooh, that's a very, very tough question. Vetting process to help find it out. And I think the core pieces to really make sure you have there is, one, try and get a good connection with the team, the founders, or whoever you can get a hold of in those companies. Two is to really make sure that the fundamentals are there, and then make sure that you get a good gut feel. I trust my gut a lot. And then the third piece, I would say, there is really make sure that you have a good, strong team to help make a decision as well. Because having a single person make a decision is going to be quite risky. I think it's better if you have a group of people understanding the overall system. And that's kind of what we're doing over at Yurei. We have like a 2 to 3 phase process when it comes to the vetting, where we're doing initial screenings, we're doing interviews with the founders, we're doing AMAs to bring them into the community, let the community build an understanding. And then we also produce a 6-page report to make sure that everybody knows what's going on. They know what we are thinking from an objective standpoint with pros and cons. And we even leave peer reviews and so on as well, to really make sure that we give as much information as we can. And then we give the option to the community to decide if they actually want to invest. And I lag out again.
I think you did for just a second. Yeah. Yeah. I think this is one of the great questions of our time, is how do you value a project at the early stages of existence? I mean, we can look at tokenomics, we can look at team, we can look at the fundamentals of the actual technology in the business. What niche are they in? What are the headwinds? What are the tailwinds? You can look at all those things and then still be completely wrong. So it's a very interesting thing to think about, and most of these businesses do not have cash flows. So, how do you do a discounted cash flow analysis? And then some of them are intentionally not generating cash flow because, like the Silicon Valley show meme, They're like, oh, pre-revenue, you have infinite upside, but once you have
Yeah.
revenue, then they're going to track you based on that. You always want
Yeah.
to be pre-rev. So that whole meme. So it's
Yeah.
complicated. It's a really interesting, complicated question.
It is. It is. And I think traditional finance sectors learns that you will not always be right. It's about finding the strong aces in that deck and really try to hammer down on them, because maybe you hit like 1 in 5 or 1 in 10, but preferably at that point, they should be the winners that help you recover all the potential losses that you have and more, right? That's kind of how venture capitalism works. And it is, I mean, it's kind of our job to help improve that ratio. So it is more of a 1 in 5 or one in less than that than a 1 in 10. But yeah, nobody will ever be perfect. And you might even have people that have everything right. But as my Chris, my old mentor, used to say, in order for you to succeed, you need three things, and it's persistence, luck, and timing. If one of those three variables isn't there, then you're unlikely to succeed. You might have everything you need, but the timing is not right. Or it could just be that you know exactly what you're doing, but given that we're in crypto, you might have malicious thoughts and then you just run away with the money as well. That happens. For some people, it might just be that they haven't handled that much money before and the temptation is just too big as well. So it happens.
Yeah, we certainly saw that happen even at the biggest scale. I mean, everyone, one of my biggest like sort of shocked moments of the entire like FTX SBF thing is I was like, were you shooting for 1 trillion? Like what was going to be like enough? Like you had a lock stop, two smoking barrels, like path to be a $10 billion company and have a lot of that be, in your own pocket, and then to like still get greedy.
Yep.
There's no sort of upper bound on human greed, unfortunately.
Nope, exactly. And I mean, at that point, it also becomes sort of like a numbers game, because it's just so unreal how much money that actually is. It's kind of an interesting thing, but yeah, it's now, and it's also getting very philosophical. So we're not there yet, or at least I'm not there yet. So I'll let you guys know if I ever make it there.
100%. And speaking of making it, I want to talk a little bit about your thesis on crypto gaming, because
Mm-hmm.
obviously, as an integral part of Tokyo, we're the crypto gaming Illuminati, and we're very deeply integrated into the gaming world at this point. So,
Mm-hmm.
what is your thesis on crypto gaming? Where does it, is it valuable? Is it not valuable? Are you bullish? Are you not bullish? Like, just share your thoughts.
I'm very much for a lot of it. I'm not a big fan of the simple like play to earn models and so on. I feel like we're moving towards more of the whole premise of earning something is great on the side and it's a bonus for people to play and so on. Where I feel like the core viability of everything comes is the true ownership side and the reusability. If we can get into a market where so sharing information like metadata and so on, help with tracking and whatnot, I think that's going to be a great thing, because the blockchain is great when it comes to distributing information and holding that as a verifiable truth. But at the same time, overusing the blockchain is like anything else when it comes to engineering. Just because you have a shiny new hammer, not everything becomes a nail. So using crypto in abundance is not good necessarily. And that's when you get things like choked out blockchains. You have things not working out, the games being slow, very inefficient and whatnot. And it's just not going to be a fun experience. So I think it has to be a very, very strong balancing act. And I mean, if there's one thing that crypto is good at, it's DeFi. DeFi is amazing, right? It's a lot of fun. So if you can tie in the ownership side and the DeFi sector and so on, and use that on chain, that's a great thing, because you can create things like the World of Warcraft auction house. That can be a great, like, quote unquote mini game to actually run on chain, right? And then at that point, you actually get more people in. It's a more open market. You can actually teach people about markets and so on as well at a more stable pace, or a more like integral pace, than doing something in a game. And you can get more fun out of it, more fun and joy. But I don't think, did I lag out again?
Yeah, we lost just the very last part. You don't think that we lost you.
That's very funny that it always happens at the end of the sentence as well, that I can notice. So I was saying you get a lot of things from it, but you shouldn't delve too deep into only using crypto or going too deep into crypto gaming, because gaming should be the focus point. Crypto is a good means for certain things, like we talked about, like ownership, sharing, and the finance side. But I don't think everything should be on chain.
Yeah, I think when you have games that are crypto for crypto's sake, essentially, where this is really just a Web2 game and we're adding crypto in there. To me, that's just as bad as adding a little AI in there. To me, the whole thing has to integrate properly, and there has to be a reason for it. Like, why are you adding it, and what are you trying to do that's different, or what problem are you trying to fix? And and I think that combination of things, and when people realize that and focus on, okay, let's solve something, I think that's going to make the big difference for the games in the future.
I completely agree. And yeah, because I have my own shtick on that as well. But yeah, it ties back to everything. Like when it comes to blockchain, AI, and whatever, it's a tool, and it doesn't make everything a nail. Just make sure that you use it in moderation, and it has to have a purpose.
Yeah, totally agree. And this will be the last question for me. I do have to drop after this, but absolute pleasure having you on, Felix, and always great to be here with you, Jared and Ben. I'm running off for a little jujitsu, which I am a big advocate for. But for this next sort of cycle of crypto gaming that we're seeing, obviously you had mentioned the play to earn sort of meta that we all knew to grow and hate from the last cycle. The new one is play to airdrop, which on its face looks pretty similar. Now, is there a difference between play to earn and play to airdrop? And if so, what would that difference be? And is it more sustainable?
Excellent question. I guess we will have to wait and see when the P2A games and so on actually release a lot of things and the tokens get out in circulation more. But I feel like, personally, I'm not a fan of it. I feel like it leads to a lot of FOMO and hype and craze, which is great for marketing and reach and so on. But it also leads to, with the point systems and whatnot, somewhat arcane number games, and people not necessarily knowing what they're getting into. A lot of speculation, which also helps inflate the numbers more and whatnot, which is great for kickstarting a game and whatnot. But is it good for the economy? I don't think so. I feel like more often than not, that means that you are putting in, or rather, you're pulling in the crowd that is more for the speculative side rather than the enjoyment of the game. And yeah, it's going to be great for the token, but it's not going to be good for the ecosystem, in my opinion. It's still feasible. I mean, people can still execute on it remarkably well, but it's going to make things a whole lot harder to sustain unless you actually make sure that you get the right type of people in there as well that actually want to participate. They want to be good for the economy, because it's like what Becker has said and a lot of other people have said as well. And it's, if you're selling, somebody else is buying your bags and they're holding your bags. And with even more hype and drive around the airdrops, that's just going to increase. So I think it's definitely not beneficial to the game or the ecosystem to do so.
Well, Mr. Nick, Mr. Crypto Atheist, thank you very much for joining us. As always, you're a legend. I would encourage everybody to immediately leverage long bet on Nick to win the tournament. And best of luck choking some fools out. Very excited for the update next week.
Only risk what you can afford to lose. That would be my closing advice. I'll see you guys all later. Thanks, Felix, again. Thank you, guys, and enjoy the rest of the pod.
See you, Nick. So to keep it going here, I want to talk a little bit about and bridge conversation into the AI piece, because obviously with your background in AI, you probably have an actual grasp on the technology beyond just tracking. It's just what most people probably do is just tracking influencers on Twitter, calling out which coins to buy and not really understanding anything that's going on behind it. How much of AI cryptos is vaporware versus real products being built or are functioning and useful in society today?
I would say
not to put you on the spot or anything.
Yeah, I would say in the crypto space right now, and I think people either are going to hate me or love me for this, but I think 90 to 95% of the stuff that is going out there is complete vaporware. There are some very good products that have been trying to build a lot of things. And some have succeeded as well. So they're not necessarily fully vaporware. Would I argue that they are necessarily building something that is for the benefit of technology and building something to help bring the space forward and whatnot? No. Are they successful businesses? Somewhat. So not complete vaporware. Are the incentives aligned with the end consumers? Not necessarily. So it is like a sliding scale as well. Been very, very recently, yeah, 90%, if not more, is complete vaporware. And it's just speculations on the tokens because people like the mentions of TPUs or nodes or what have you that relates to AI or GPUs as well.
How do you parse through that? Like if you're not technically inclined, how do you have any shot at being actually able to tell what's vaporware and what's not? Or is it just, GG's, good luck, you can't, good luck,
I
have
think,
fun?
yeah, when it comes to things like this, I think people should, well, one, the easiest thing is have a friend that is a tech geek. I have myself, I'm lucky. That's the simple answer. I think the important thing is tying back to learning and so on, but metacognition. It's important to have an ability to learn how to learn and know what is important to know. Having some fundamental knowledge of what's going on in the space isn't necessarily too hard to get a grasp on. So that is a good, at least first starting point to help understand. You need to understand some of the technology in order to answer that question. At least that's my thesis. And trying to nestle out what makes sense, because more often than not, if something seems too good to be true, it's too good to be true. And AI is nothing magical. It's just statistics on steroids. So the whole discussions about general AI or artificial general AI and so on, or AGI, artificial general intelligence, I still argue that we're quite a few ways out. So speculations on things like that, I might be wrong, but I wouldn't bet on it because what I've been learning in school, what I've been seeing when I read papers and so on, it doesn't speak so much for that being the case. So yeah, that's my general advice.
Phone a friend, always a strong answer. Always a good idea.
Phone a friend. Yeah. No, but in general, just if it sounds like it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. That's the best one, I would say. And short-term, like roadmaps and so on as well. AI is not easy to build. It's extremely difficult. So that's also one thing. Like if time horizons seem to be very, very short, it's not going to happen.
I was wondering if you could weigh in also on the DePIN craze, which is the sort of next step where decentralized physical infrastructure. So using GPUs. Are there any companies right now where I could say go put something up and have a bunch of cloud computers work on it for me? Or is that just sort of the next narrative, like Ben was talking about with vaporware? How do you parse through which of the projects are real, ready to go, and actually have a use case, and which ones are just saying, all right, we're deep in now, invest?
It's a very interesting thing, I was going to say, because there are some big projects out there right now that is looking to do DePIN. One of the biggest ones recently is Aether, right? And I'm very impressed with what they've achieved. They've invested in a lot of stuff. They're running everything and so on as well. The question here is what defines DePIN? Because the hardware and so on from these providers and everything that you're investing in is usually centralized. They run the nodes. They run the GPUs for you. So is it decentralized? That is my question. The philosophy of having decentralized computation, like what Akash and other providers are providing and such, I like it. I think Nillion is one as well that is doing that, and so on, which I think is a great idea. There are some projects that are looking to do that as well, where you can basically share compute power, similar to how a node network works for the blockchain, which is great. This new DePIN craze where you have the nodes, it gets a bit interesting because the decentralization comes from the checker nodes, as far as I understood it, where they ping and check and making sure that the hardware is running as it should. But the hardware that you're using is not necessarily decentralized whatsoever. So depending on what type of DePIN we're talking about, it could be super, super interesting if it follows the true decentralization principles. But if it's more about the checker node craze, I feel like it's more a craze than anything because I don't necessarily see the value in it unless I get cheaper rates than going onto Amazon, AWS, and actually renting GPU power there, because effectively it's the same thing. Except for example, the pricing might be less volatile. I don't know. Did that answer your question, Joanne?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the sort of the next logical part of that, if it's going to be decentralized, it seems like everyone would be able to put their own GPU power or whatever infrastructure we're talking about up for people to use. And I haven't seen that actually work. And I agree what you're saying. If it's going to be decentralized, well, we need both the input and the output. And I haven't seen that other part of it.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly what I want to see as well. Because if you have that, that's when things become very, very interesting. There were some projects about doing things like that, I think, but I don't necessarily remember anyone off the top of my head. I know GP Unit said that they were striving to do so, but I haven't seen any output, so I don't see any fidelity to it. But I'm not sure if they have gone live yet either. But that's kind of where we want to go, right? Because if we can leverage the compute power that is idle from the consumers of the world, print in theory for getting maximum compute power compared to actually manufacturing a whole lot more hardware to then use and basically lining the pockets of NVIDIA and so on. So
yeah, it's like the idea of an office building where you have a company that comes in the daytime and uses it, and then when they go home, another company comes in at nighttime and uses it because it's idle and it's just there for no reason. So to me, computing power is perfect for that. And if somebody unlocks that, I think that would be an interesting idea. But I was just curious, since you know way more about it than I do.
No, but I completely agree with you. That's where I would want to see DePIN. That's DePIN for me. That is the centralized physical infrastructure.
So I want to.
That's my fiance in the background. Sorry for any yells.
Oh, well, welcome to come share some alpha too. But yeah, I want to talk about something that I think a lot of founders probably struggle with, which is trying to balance the side of you that is a builder and the other side of you, which is an investor / speculator, depending on, where on the risk curve you fall. How do you both build and invest into different projects? What is your kind of thesis there? How do you allocate your time? I would imagine being a businessman makes you a better investor, or being a better investor makes you a better businessman, but you still have the time. So how, what's your approach?
Having good friends, having a good network is very important. I rarely have much bandwidth for anything when it comes to investment these days, so I'm extremely picky as well. But more often than not, I tend to lean on to my friends to say like, hey, this is an interesting thing, have a look at it. I then give it, I ask them for their input and see what they think. And then I also do some due diligence myself. And then if my gut feel doesn't tell me it's a yes, then it's definitely a no. And then I just continue working. That's more or less what it is. I also try to leverage the experience that I have from being a builder and apply that to the investment side. So if I don't fundamentally understand the product or the business, the value proposition, did I lag out now, by the way?
Yeah, it stopped that if you don't understand the fundamental value or business proposition.
Cool. Yeah. So if I don't understand the fundamental value or the value proposition of the business, then I won't invest. And I usually ask those questions when I'm getting in contact with founders and so on as well. So I get kind of the best of both worlds, was actually helping running a VC as well, because then I get the DD done by the company, and I can double tap into that. But yeah, I'm very much a fundamentalist as well at heart. So if I don't understand the product, I will not invest. And if it doesn't have a solid business model, I will not invest. And I'm very math heavy, so I like to do my numbers.
And when you're thinking about that, are you looking at mostly early stage illiquid, or more so like playing in liquid markets, or combination of both, and whatever happens to be the best opportunity at the time? Like, what's your strategy there?
I would say it's a mixture of both. Definitely more in the liquid early stage because I believe that has more long term upside. Um, and I also know the fact that I'm not a great trader. I get some very good trades now and then, but I think I'm like slightly maybe above net zero when it comes to end output when it comes to trading. So letting my money rest somewhere else is usually more beneficial as an investor. Uh, but it's always fun to degen and throw some money into shitcoins and see what happens. It's always fun. Um, so yeah, I'm like maybe a 75-25 into investment versus trading.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I found a lot of people have a very interesting approach to it, because there's so many factors, right? Like, you have to keep in mind, like, okay, well, if I get in earlier into a deal, chances are I'm going to get better prices. However, I'm going to be less liquid, so I can't get out of it. So if something blows up, I'm part of the wood that's contributing to the fire that has then led to the, to blowing up. But on the liquid side, you can get out at any time, but you perhaps might have less upside. If things do go fully parabolic. And then, do you farm? Do you not farm? Do you stake? Do you not stake? Do you lock up? There's so many decisions to have to be made there. So I just always think it's interesting of like, investing is this whole beast over here, but then you're trying to do your buildering over there. And so it's like, it can often conflict. Probably you're in a really good position compared to other builders because you're in the VC world. So there's that competitive advantage when investing. But yeah, it's always just interesting to think about. And like, I'm sure a lot of other builders feel very similarly. And so they're like, oh, what do I do? So it's good to hear from somebody that's in the trenches.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to really do that as well. And just tying back to the staking side that you were mentioning, one of the key things that I'm really thinking is if I believe in the product or in the project, I will stake and I will support because I believe it's going to be beneficial long term. But if I have any, like, again, gut feeling, I trust my gut more than I trust anything these days because I've learned from mistakes of not trusting it that I burn myself. Um, so if it's not a complete hell yeah, it's a no. And at that point, I would just hold on to an opportune moment where I want to exit, and then I exit. That's more or less the way I do it. Don't do any intermediary gambling stuff because it can pay out and play off, but I don't think it's gonna. You're not gonna have that much of a hit rate.
100%. And then there's always the idea, or I'll say, complication of like, a lot of us know everybody else in the space, and it's like, if you're investing in your friend's token and then you want to get out of it, like, how do you do that gracefully to where you don't tank the chart? Like,
Yep.
are you going to go and, work with the market maker to make sure you do, something that doesn't, because you don't want to be the opposite of the God candle that everybody looks and it's you and you're like, oh shit, sorry guys,
Yep.
made a mistake. I wanted to go buy a house, and so I liquidated, and now you're negative
Yep.
50% on the chart, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's not easy. That's not easy at all. I've had some of those moments where I've become like a whale, quote unquote. And it's scary as well because then like how difficult it is for them to manage capital as well without destroying the markets. I is so regulated with that as well, making sure that you don't ruin the markets, right? It's scary. It's easy when things are very liquid in the space.
100%.
I wanted to bring it back to your projects. I know since you're such a involved in the development part of it, are you also involved in the sort of business operations part? And how do you balance those two things? Do you spend more time in with the other developers, or do you spend more time in with the operations part? And how do you find the talented people? So how would you find a dev that could fill in if you're working on the business part? That's what I was curious about.
Meetings. uh, I I am right now. I'm very much a technical CEO because we're running a tech company. So I'm like a CEO and CTO in one at the moment. We have some very very good talent that I'm hoping to become this that, I can leave more and more of the technical side to them. But as things are right now, it's like a quarter of my day goes to syncing up with my developers, making sure everything is on track on the product side, because the products, they're kind of my ideas to begin with. So making sure that people understand what my vision is very important. And from there, it's like letting them build and making sure that we do things the right way, properly, but also not too much being a micromanagement person, because I hate being micromanaged myself. So it's about a lot of trust, the talent. Basically, most of our staff is from people that I've worked with before. So we have people from my dev agency involved. We have people that I've worked with and managed before from other companies involved, and referrals from them. So it's very much a trust-based system there, where I either know that they are good at what they're doing, or I trust their word in bringing in people that they trust and know what they're doing. So it's very much based off of that. And so far, it's working quite well. We're still very small. The other thing that we're learning very quickly as well is that it's very dangerous to overhire. I wouldn't say we have overhired, but it's very easy to bring in a lot of people, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh shit, we don't necessarily know how to most effectively use all these people. And that's one thing that is very, very scary. And also, the hardest thing is not giving a person a job. The hardest thing is having to let them go. So that's one thing to be very, very mindful of. And we're trying to basically figure out and navigate that on a daily basis. And when it comes to business operations, I'm in most of those calls. We have some good other people in the executives as well that are helping out with strategic decision making. I'm just there to have a final say and so on as well. And then a big shout out to my COO to make sure that I'm sane. Scott is amazing. He basically is my right-hand man in everything these days. If there's somebody that I need to talk with, it's him. He knows everything that's going on. He makes it so I can feel like everything internally on the business side is running smoothly, except for the dev side, because that's my domain. And then I can focus on externally facing calls and being on podcasts like this, and just making sure that my devs know what they're doing. So the right people, simple answer. Being lucky to find the right people.
So Felix, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about a bit of your history and background, projects you're working on, a little bit of Neo Tokyo, talked about crypto gaming, we've talked about AI, we've talked about DeepIn, we talked about building, we talked about trading, investing, talked a little bit about internal biz ops, we talked a little bit of legal. We've covered a lot of ground here, and I want to be very respectful of your time. What do we have left to cover that you feel like is critical that we should talk about, but we have not yet asked?
That's an excellent question. We've covered a lot of ground. I mean, an interesting question I would like to ask you guys as well. What chain / ecosystem do you feel like you're most interested in right now, and do you think is going to blow up next?
Go ahead, Jared.
I think base, honestly. I'm a big proponent of it. I think it's in the right position, and they have obviously the right backing. Legally, they're already doing all of the things they need to in the public realm. So they have a massive amount of infrastructure. And they have, like you're saying, overhiring. They're probably one of the most capable people of needing to shift and move around. So to me, I think that's the one that I am most excited about. And, I have not a lot of exposure on it, but that to me is the number one.
Ben?
I would say on the side of just what I'm seeing coming down the pipeline from like early stage stuff, which will most likely translate. A lot of people are very excited about Bitcoin, like on top of Bitcoin things.
L2s,
So
basically. Mm-hmm.
yeah, L2s, Bitcoin DeFi, runes, ordinals, like people are pumped about that stuff. It's gotten a lot of mind share. I think the seductive part of that narrative is look how much Bitcoin has accomplished by just being digital gold, by just being something that sits here forever and doesn't move. Imagine when we siphon the learnings and from all the other chains and bring that to King Orange and we see what happens there. It's a very attractive narrative. Obviously some of the more I'll call them radical Bitcoiners are like, get off of my chain, like the old people, get off my lawn folks.
Yeah, yeah.
But they, nobody gives a shit what they have to say. People want to do what they want to do. So it's gonna get built out. It's gonna be interesting. People are gonna mess up. They're gonna learn. They're gonna get better. They're gonna improve. Things are gonna get really cool there. So I would be very interested to see what happens on that. I think
Hmm.
one of the more underrated chains is probably one that has not yet really hit like mainstream adoption, which is actually two of them, Immutable and Ronin. Like there are so many games that are building on these two chains, and there are so many games that are increasingly building on these two, especially Immutable. And I would be very, very surprised if they do not experience just a massive surge in usage over time. Whether they can retain those games and developers is another story. Um, I'd say one of the critiques of that chain is that they're not particularly sticky. They do have folks that leave their chain for others. Um, I also am interested to see what happens when we start seeing L3s in the EVM world and people start building on top of the different L2s because that adds in just a whole nother realm of fun that people haven't really, messed with. I also think that they're going to be kind of your, one of your dark horses, like I mentioned, Ronin. They have so much experience building something for millions of people, and I don't think people realize like the users from Axie did not just go away. Like they're not just gone. They're they're still there and they are still active in ways. And so whenever the next hit game comes, one of our, fellow citizen friends, founder of Pixels, Luke, he might be the one. They have a tremendous amount of traction. So yeah, I would say be on the lookout for that. And then you really can never count Solana fully out of the race because you've got a lot of people that are extremely bullish on Solana. And if you think about some of the different narratives that we've talked about, the one that I'm most knowledgeable about being gaming, like you have to have extremely fast and extremely cheap transactions in order to build stuff and a lot of infrastructure on chain in a really easy way. But then also, if you think about the future of like AI, there's going to be a significant amount of transactions that occur that are going to be machine to machine transactions. Like the blockchain was basically built for machines to transact with each other and for human beings because human beings like we got to click shit, we got to poke things, and we got to do stuff. We're not very effective at like being super fast at that, right? Like you could sit there and train to click your ledger buttons, like a freaking Olympic athlete, but you're never going to be faster than a machine. It's just going to outcompete you by a factor of 10,000 at a minimum. So like when we get machines that are like trading together, you're going to need ultra low fees and ultra fast um, transaction speed and massive throughput. And probably Solana is going to win that fight and capture a lot of market share there. So I don't necessarily think we are fully valuing the monetary premium that will come from massive amounts of transaction volume because you need things that can be the connective tissue between all of those things. And usually it's the gas on the base chain. So out of all of them, probably Solana because it's gonna crush in the gaming and the AI narrative. But on just the gaming stuff, I look at Immutable. I would look at Ronin as kind of your like, you know, dark horses that, or maybe not dark horses, but like market leaders that are onboarding a lot. IMX, Dark
Mm-hmm.
Horse, more Ronin. And then
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, guys. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Superverse. We know they have a blockchain coming. I'm pretty hyped. I made a lot of money on Super, so I'm very grateful for that. So,
Nice.
here's the hoping. But that's my very long-winded answer to your question that probably did not seek that long-winded of an answer.
I mean, I like it. I like it. You're thinking it from different angles. That's exactly how I like to think. I do agree with both of your answers as well. I think base chain has the ability that could be the next narrative. We also have Blast, of course, that is going to do some major moves next month, as far as I know, or I've been told. Could go well. We know Pac-Man is able to push through a lot of hype and anticipation. I also think like Bitcoin for sure. Like I'm digging into a lot of details right now, and I've come across like Build on Bitcoin or Bob.xyz and so on. And they seem to be thinking about ideas of actually crossing Bitcoin and Ethereum to some extent as well, which is interesting. Using the compute power on Ethereum and then using proof of work on Bitcoin as the actual final consensus layer, which is very, very interesting because then in theory, Ethereum becomes sort of like a layer 2 to Bitcoin. And then you have layer 2s on Ethereum, which then in theory would be layer 3s, if you look at that. And then you have subnets and so on those layer 2s or other chains as well, which then in theory could also be viewed as layer 4s or layer 3s as well. So it's very, very interesting to see what comes next. But I'm definitely keen on seeing what happens in the Bitcoin space as well, even though Bitcoin has a lot of issues when it comes to those things. But the layer 2s hopefully will solve that out as well. There are a lot of roll-up tech being built. The use of Ethereum as a potential layer 2 might be a great idea, at least in the meantime as well. So we'll see.
Full send on like bringing Ethereum and Bitcoin together. The more that we can become a unified front as crypto, the stronger we will be. Like,
yep,
because it's not an addition equation. That is an exponential equation. Like that's a multiplication with an exponent in that equation when you bring those two things together, because it's networks on top of networks on top of networks that are coming together. And Metcalfe's law, there's an exponent in there somewhere that becomes unbelievably powerful. Like that to me is like bringing together, the big telecom companies and all coming together to bring the best network to the person. Let's do that. I don't know who we need to talk to make that happen, but let's push that through because that's a great idea. Full send, please.
Let's go. Sounds good to me, gentlemen. Word as well.
Oh, he
to be honest.
cut out for a second.
Oh, of course I did. That's just a sign. I was just saying that I think that's a perfect end to this episode as well, because you really brought it full circle with that comment.
Love it. Well, Felix, you're the man. Deeply appreciate you on a personal level as well as on a professional level. Everything that you do, you're totally awesome. Neo Tokyo owes you a great debt. And I think we're very, very lucky to have you helping to steer the ship there. And I'm very excited to see what comes from all the things that you are building. I'm also part of that, so I'm extra super excited about that. So yeah, big heart, big love on that note. But thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for your time, gentlemen. It was a pleasure being here.
Thanks, Felix. Thanks, Ben. It's a pleasure.
Take
All
care,
right, everybody.
folks.
Thank you so much. And to you, ladies and gentlemen, and robots and chickens and AI and whatever else you are watching, we deeply appreciate you. Thank you for tuning into Interlinked, the official podcast of Neo Tokyo. We will see you on the next episode. Take care.